Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking directly into the future of decentralized energy, what it really means for, the average household.
Hmm.
We're focusing specifically on Germany, actually, and this revolution happening where households are becoming, well, prosumers.
Right. Producing and consuming.
Exactly. Generating, storing, and strategically managing their own power, their heat, even their mobility
This is
needs.
a big shift.
It really is. So our mission today is to unpack one extremely detailed source. It's a deep dive into the technical side, but also the financial feasibility of combining solar PV, heat pumps, and electric vehicles right there in your neighborhood.
Yeah, seeing if it actually works practically and economically.
Precisely. We want to know, what does the single most cost-effective system look like for the average home?
A key question.
So the source material we're really digging into today is titled Cost and Self-Consumption Optimized Residential PV Prosumer Systems in Germany, covering residential electricity, heat, and mobility demand.
It's a bit of a mouthful, that title.
It is a mouthful, but it really spells out the scope, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And this study is, well, it's crucial because it models the German energy transition way out to 2050.
Oh, that's today?
No. Looking ahead. And it covers both single-family houses and bigger apartment buildings, tenements. The main takeaway, you need sector coupling.
Sector coupling. Explain that a bit.
It just means linking electricity, heat, and transport together. The study shows you just can't really maximize your own solar power use or, minimize your total energy costs, the annual total cost of energy, or ATCE, unless you integrate all three.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So you can't just think about electricity in isolation anymore.
Exactly. It all has to work together.
Okay, let's unpack this then. If sector coupling is the answer, what are the key bits of technology? What components make up this optimized system?
Well, the model identified 5 core elements. You need optimized photovoltaic panels, so PV generators.
Solar panels, yeah.
Right. Then stationary lithium batteries, a good heat pump system,
Mm-hmm.
thermal energy storage, TES, basically a hot water tank, and of course, battery electric vehicles, BEVs.
Got it. PV, battery, heat pump, heat storage, EV. And I noticed you said a robust heat pump system. Did they specify types?
They did, and it's interesting. It depended on the building. For single-family houses, they went with ground source heat pumps, GSHPs,
Okay, why those?
mostly for stability and higher efficiency. They fixed the coefficient of performance, the COP, at 3.8. But for tenements, apartment blocks, drilling for ground loops often isn't practical.
Right, space issues.
Exactly. So there they used air source heat pumps, ASHPs, with a slightly lower COP set at 3.5. Shows the optimization has to consider the real world situation.
Makes sense. Adapting the tech. Now let's talk mobility, the electric vehicle's role. The study looked at 4 scenarios for single-family homes, didn't it?
Yes, no cars, only car 1.
Car 1 being the one that's usually away during the day.
That's the one. A bigger battery, 80 kilowatters, but mostly charging away from home or maybe getting a top-up from the system in the morning. Then only car 2.
And car 2 is the interesting one.
Car 2 is the game changer. It's usually at home during peak solar hours, smaller battery, 60 kilowatters, but crucially, it has vehicle-to-home capability, V2H.
V2H, bidirectional charging. Power flows both ways.
Exactly. And this is maybe the biggest aha moment in the study. That V2H car 2, can, and I'm quoting loosely here, mostly take over the tasks of a stationary battery.
Wait, hang on. Mostly take over, so the car is the home battery.
In many situations, yes. It means you might not need a separate, big, expensive stationary battery if you have a V2H-capable car parked at home often.
Wow, that's
Mhm.
that's huge because you're buying the car anyway, presumably for transport.
Precisely. You're leveraging an asset you already need. The study explicitly says V2H cars and heat pumps are cheaper ways to store that fluctuating solar energy compared to just adding more electricity-only storage.
Okay, that completely changes the economics, doesn't it? So how does the system decide where the solar power goes first? Is there like a priority list?
Oh yes, a very clear hierarchy. Priority 1 is always direct self-consumption, DSC, using the power right away in the house.
Makes sense. Use it if you need it.
Exactly. Any extra power then goes to charge the stationary battery, if you have one.
Okay.
Then, interestingly, in the early morning, like 5 or 6 a.m., the stationary battery tries to charge car 1, the usually wake car, before it leaves.
Ah, clever. To maximize PV use, even if the sun isn't strong yet, using stored energy from the day before.
You got it. Especially important in winter. Only after that, if the stationary battery can't meet car 1's needs, then it looks to car 2, the V2H car, to potentially help out, but only if car 2 has enough juice left for its own planned trip plus a safety margin.
That sounds like a really sophisticated bit of programming running things behind the scenes.
It has to be to get the best results, financially speaking.
Right. Let's talk finances then. This is what everyone wants to know. Does this complex, optimized system actually save money for a typical German family? Given the upfront costs for PV, maybe a heat pump, maybe a new EV, is it cost effective?
Okay, so this is where the study really throws down a marker. It finds that all the optimized systems they modeled, both single-family and tenements, are already profitable compared to just buying 100% of your energy from the grid. And that profitability starts back in 2015 in their model.
Hold on. Profitable starting in 2015. How? Weren't PV panels and heat pumps way more expensive then? Are we talking actual cash savings from day one, or is this more theoretical?
It's based on the annual total cost of energy, the ATCE. Their modeling accounts for the falling costs of components over time, plus things like incentives, and crucially, the rising cost of grid electricity you avoid paying. When you factor all that in, even with 2015 costs, the optimized setup beats relying solely on the grid over the system's lifetime.
Okay. Lifetime cost. So
Yeah.
what kind of savings are we talking about? Let's take single-family houses first.
Compared to that 100% grid supply baseline, in 2015, the scenario with no cars actually saved the most, logically. About €1,300 a year.
Because no car energy demand.
Right. But importantly, the two-car scenario, even with the V2H car, still saved around €1,000 a year back in 2015.
€1,000 a year is definitely not trivial, even
Yeah.
then.
No. But watch what happens by 2050. As components get cheaper and grid prices likely rise, the potential savings jump dramatically to about $3,500 per year.
Wow, €3,500.
Yes, for both the two-car scenario and the no-car scenario. Huge potential savings.
That kind of money makes a real difference to a household budget. That's
Yes,
transformative.
you know.
And this is driven by the overall cost, the ATCE, dropping over time.
Absolutely. The study projects that between 2015 and 2050, the ATCE itself can drop by over €2,000 per year for these optimized systems.
Reducing your total energy bill by $2,000.
Exactly. And they noted that systems with larger thermal energy storage, the TES, showed slightly better cost drops, maybe up to €2,300 a year drop for the biggest tank in the two-car scenario.
Because storing heat is relatively cheap compared to storing electricity.
That seems to be the logic, yes.
Yeah.
Capturing that excess solar as heat is cost-effective.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Beyond cost, what about energy independence? How self-sufficient can these households become? The study looked at cover ratios, right? SCR, DCR, HCR.
It did. Self-consumption ratio, demand cover ratio, heat cover ratio. And the optimization process reveals a really key trade-off here.
A trade-off. Between what?
Basically, you can't perfectly optimize for minimum cost, ATCE, and
Yeah.
maximum SCR at the exact same time.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible.
You have to choose which is more important.
And-
Or find a balance.
Sort of, yeah. Model finds a balance, but it leans towards cost optimization.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the self-consumption ratio, the SCR, how much of the PV you generate that you actually use yourself, it starts quite high in 2015, maybe over 90% if you have no cars using energy. But by 2050, across all scenarios, the SCR actually drops significantly, down to around 45% to 50%.
It drops. Why?
Because to get the lowest overall cost, ATCE, the optimal system by 2050 involves installing huge amounts of PV, way more than you need most of the time.
So you end up exporting a lot, especially in summer, even though that wasn't the primary goal.
Exactly. Exporting becomes a side effect of minimizing the total cost. Interestingly, the SCR wasn't really affected much by the size of the thermal storage tank because the PV and battery sizes adapted accordingly.
Okay, so maybe not super high self-consumption, but what about covering their actual demand? How much electricity do they still need to buy from the grid? That's the demand cover ratio, DCR.
Right. And here, the picture looks much better. The DCR for electricity gets really high. By 2050, they found DCRs of around 95% are possible.
95% demand covered by your own system. That's close to off-grid for electricity.
Very close.
Yeah.
And even back in 2015, those scenarios, using Car 2, the V2H car, they achieved the best DCRs, covering 77% to 80% of their electricity needs even then.
The V2H car pops up again as a key enabler. Does the same hold true for covering heating needs? The heat covered ratio, HCR?
Very similar story. HCR starts lower in 2015, but rises steadily to about 90% cover by 2050.
So 90% of heating provided by the heat pump running on your own solar or stored energy.
Pretty much. And again, using Car 2 as that flexible energy supply option led to higher HCRs in the earlier years too, around 50% to 58% for the two-car scenario back then.
That V2H capability just seems essential for performance across the board.
It really seems to be, according to this model.
Okay, this brings us to system design. If the ultimate goal is the absolute lowest cost system by 2050, what does it actually look like? What are the optimal component sizes?
Right, the recipe for 2050 involves going big on solar. The least cost systems require really large PV capacities. They modeled up to 30 kilowatts peak for a single-family house.
30 kilowatt P. That's a lot of panels for one roof.
It is. It's pushing the limits of typical roof space.
Okay.
But the most flexible component, the one that changes most drastically depending on the scenario, is the stationary battery.
Ah, because of the V2H car.
Exactly. If Car 2, the V2H vehicle, is part of the system, the stationary battery becomes almost, well, minimal. Maybe only up to 5 kilowatt hours capacity, just a small buffer.
Okay.
But if you don't have that V2H car, say you've only got Car 1, the one-way charger, or no car at all, then the stationary battery has to pick up all the slack.
It has to compensate.
Completely. In those scenarios, the optimal stationary battery size balloons up to 30 kilowatt hours by 2050 for the only Car 1 scenario.
Wow. So 5 kilowatt hours of V2H or 30 kilowatt hours without it, that's a massive difference in battery costs.
Huge. The V2H car is effectively acting like a 25 kilowatt stationary battery you didn't have to buy separately because you likely needed the car anyway.
That's the economic leverage right there. Amazing. Now, briefly, how does this translate to denser living? Multifamily buildings, the tenements in Germany?
It's broadly similar, but with some key differences. The ATCE per flat is actually a bit lower than in single-family homes.
Lower. Why?
Mainly because space heating demand per flat is about 41% lower due to shared walls, less exposed surface area, that kind of thing. Economies of scale. The average tenement in the model had like 7 or 8 flats, 15 people or so.
Okay. And how did they handle the V2H cars in that shared setting?
They use what they call the solidarity principle.
Hmm.
Basically, owners of V2H cars let the whole building system use their car's storage capacity for free when it's plugged in.
Communal sharing of mobile storage. Nice idea. Did that eliminate the need for a stationary battery?
Not quite. Even with shared V2H cars helping out, the total energy demand of the whole building is much larger. So stationary batteries still play a pretty significant role in tenements.
They still need a central buffer.
Yeah, the optimal size increased quite a bit, up to maybe 48, 55 kilowatt by 2050. And the PV capacity also scales up massively, almost linearly with the number of units, hitting potentially 120 kilowatt for the whole building.
Right, scaling up to meet the larger collective demand. And did they find an optimal size for the thermal storage, the TES, in both types of buildings?
Yes, that was quite consistent. For both single-family and tenements, a medium-sized KES seemed to hit the sweet spot.
Not too small, not too big.
Exactly. It offered the best compromise between adding storage capacity to save energy and the upfront cost of the tank itself. Going too big didn't pay off enough in further cost reduction.
Okay. This has been incredibly insightful, a really detailed look at how these systems could work. The big message seems clear. Coupling power, heat, and transport is definitely the way forward.
Absolutely. And residential PV systems, when optimized like this, look extremely cost-efficient for boosting self-sufficiency in Germany.
And the role of the V2H car, it just keeps coming up as pivotal.
It's undeniable from this study's perspective. V2H cars aren't just cars anymore. They're flexible energy assets. They can, as we said, mostly take over the tasks of the stationary battery. The mobility sector becomes absolutely vital to optimizing residential energy.
So here's a final thought for you, our listener. This study predicts we need massive scale for the cheapest systems by 2050. Think 30 kilowatt PV on houses, large batteries, or ubiquitous V2H. And the study itself mentions that even further optimization is possible if you add long-term, like seasonal, storage.
Bridging the summer-winter gap.
Right. So the question becomes, how can policy help us get there? How do we support this huge scale-up of rooftop solar while also figuring out how to integrate that necessary long-term storage, maybe even at a community level, to really make this vision work year-round?
That's the next big challenge, isn't it? Integrating it all seamlessly.
Something to definitely think about as you consider your own energy future. The power of the prosumer is real. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into cost and self-consumption optimized residential PV prosumer systems in Germany, covering residential electricity, heat, and mobility demand.
Thanks for listening.
We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.